Muito boa tarde. Vou começar primeiro em língua portuguesa, porque eu vejo muito público português aqui. Desde já, boa tarde e bem-vindo aqui à Fundação Rui Cunha. Agradecendo desde já o apoio logístico em primeira mão da Fundação Rui Cunha, que tem sempre colaborado com a Associação de Jovens Macaenses para trazer diferentes seminários ou diferentes conversas de diferentes tópicos. Hoje temos aqui sobre o tema do atraso linguístico, como criar, ou pelo menos adaptado às crianças, como os pais principalmente, ou os professores, que também estão ligados a esta área da área de saúde, que é da parte da pediatria e da terapia de fala, sobre Language Delay in Macau, Raising a Bilingual Child, Myths and Challenges. I'll switch now in English. So welcome today, and thank you so much for the SDDJ presence today, and also among many parents, people from the educational area. And today we also have two main speakers, Joana Morgado Bento, she's a pediatric, and Zélia Almeida, speech therapy. So we will talk today about this topic. I think it's very interesting, especially for the parents, okay? So even my wife is here today to attend this session, and I will pass automatically the speech now to Joana. Joana will open the session. So Joana and Zélia will present themselves, and they will enter to the topic. And we hope that in the future we do more events with Rui Cunha Foundation in different topics, cultural, educational, now in the educational area, and also the health issues. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. Obrigado.
So, thank you for being here. I'd also like to thank, firstly, Fundação Rui Cunha for having us. Also, Associação dos Médicos de Língua Portuguesa for trusting us. And Antonio here, and as president of Associação Jovens Macaenses, for inviting us to be here and for letting us speak about this concern of ours and raising awareness on this topic. So I'm Joana, hello, I'm a pediatrician. I have lived in Macau since I was 5 years old. And then I moved to Portugal to study medicine. I then became a pediatrician by 2015. And in 2018, I came to Macau, and I've been working in a private clinic for 5 years now. And my area of interest is actually child development and parenting. So this is Zélia.
Thank you. Okay. So good afternoon. Thanks for the invitation. I would like to first introduce myself. My name is Zélia. I'm a speech therapist. I've been living in Macau for 5 years. I already work in schools, private clinics, and hospitals in Portugal. When I arrived in 2019, I was working in Dom José da Costa Nunes Kindergarten. Currently, I'm working in Global Med and also TIS. This is our agenda for today. So we're gonna skip it because we are lack of time, and we're gonna explain it after.
So we work together at the private clinic, right? So we don't know what the prevalence of language delay is in Macau, the accurate number. But what we know, and what is our perception in the private setting, is that we have a really high number of patients with the diagnosis of language delay. And we feel that this number is really higher than what the literature states. And we are concerned about this. So we think that this number, for example, in my patients, the patients that I follow, might be as high as 1 in 5 children in our clinical setting. So I remind you that we work in a private clinic in Macau. So we had 2 hypotheses for this problem. The first one, of course, the most obvious one, being that if we provide speech therapy in our clinic, maybe parents will come to us because they are concerned about language problems, right? This would be the most obvious explanation. But in fact, I went back to analyze the clinical files of my patients, and this is not the case because most of them didn't know about Zelia, and it was me who referred them to Zelia. So I'm talking about my patients, the patients that I follow in the clinic. So this is not as simple as this first explanation. So the second hypothesis could be that the population that we tend to in the clinic is really specific. And it's specific and is not representative at all of the population of Macau, of the rest of Macau. So why is this? Because, firstly, because I don't speak Chinese. So yes, I've lived here since I was 5, but I do not speak Chinese. I'm very ashamed of it, but yes, this is the case. So parents who come to me with concerns, they either speak Portuguese or English. So one of the parents have to be or are usually Western. At least one of the parents is Western, and because they need to speak to me in Portuguese or English. But not only Portuguese people, I have many patients from, I don't know, Canada, Australia, also France, and many other places, South Africa, many other places, but usually with some Western connection. So what I am trying to point out here is that these are people who are living in Macau for a period of time. They do not have extended families in Macau who can support them in raising children, usually. So this is a very specific population that we have in our clinic. So not representative, I have to repeat, of the rest of Macau. Okay, so and going back to the clinical files of my patients, as I was looking for concerns with language, I actually found out very interesting concerns that I wrote in the past, which are these that I wrote in the right-hand side, which are, for example, less words in parents' native languages than expected for age. So these are children who are not speaking as much as it should be expected of the language that the parents are speaking, the parents are native in. And speaking first words in English and not the native language of the parents. And another form of this would be parents needing to speak in other than the native language to their children, and usually it's English. So these are concerns very specific to this population and also not found in any other book that I've read or scientific paper. This is really specific and really interesting, that is different from the rest of the world. Yes, first of all, I'd like to address myths. So people, when justifying language delay in children, sometimes they use incorrect incorrect justifications and not scientific ones. And when they dismiss the language delay as a problem, they do not invest so much in treatment. So I would like to explain why these are myths and not scientifically correct, because I really hear many parents repeating this, and not only parents, but sometimes, unfortunately, some teachers and some health professionals repeating them. So, for example, he's a boy, boys talk later than girls. This is not true, because I do not have a different chart, a different development chart for boys and girls. I do have for height and weight, but I do not have for development. So when it comes to development, either if it's a boy or a girl, I need to check the rate of development exactly the same way and at the same stages. So I think the confusion here is because when we're talking about language delay diagnosis, there are 2% more boys than girls. So maybe the confusion comes from here, but when you have typically developing boys and girls, boys do not talk later than girls. So another myth, his father or uncle didn't talk until they were 3 and they turned out fine. When parents tell me this. For example, the father, he's fine and he had the same problem when he was a kid. I don't know if it was the same problem, the same diagnosis. I don't know his treatment, and I don't know if he was fine. And I don't know if he's fine now. So yes, this is not something that justifies not going to speech therapy, for example. Also, his mother talks for him. I meet all his needs. As a parent, he does not need to talk. When I ask, for example, at 1 year old, your 1 year old, does he say one word? Oh, no, not really. Okay, so the mama, dad, water. Oh, no, he doesn't need to say water because I'm always giving water to him. And I say, oh, but is it really possible to meet all the needs of a child 24 hours a day, that he will not need to talk because of this? I think it's impossible, so this does not justify the language delay. Also, he's not saying much, but he understands everything well. This tells me he might have a better prognosis because he has receptive language, meaning that he understands, cannot express, but understands. So this tells me he has a better prognosis, but still we need to treat him. It's not, oh, no worries, he just doesn't say anything but understands, so no problem. No, it's not no problem. We need to address this. We need to treat this. Also, he talks at home, but not at nursery, kindergarten. Okay, so this might not be a language delay from the beginning because he talks at home. Okay, but not talking at nursery or kindergarten means that he's spending a lot of time losing opportunities to practice language. So after a while, he might have a language delay. So we need to address the language delay, but also the anxiety disorder, because the anxiety disorder, selective mutism, is a form of anxiety in children. So we actually have two problems and not only one. And the last one, she's growing up bilingual, one that I hear very, very, very often. Well, it's not the justification for a language delay. It can never be, because when I assess language in a child, I do not assess language like the Portuguese and the English language. I assess language as a whole. So every word counts, even sounds that are not words, but I use specifically for a purpose. I count that one too, like dog, wow. I also count that word. A word, so it's not a word. But so any type of communication I count as language. So, and usually children who are exposed to two different languages, they learn more sounds and they learn even more words than monolingual children. So this means that they should know even more words. So being bilingual or growing up in a bilingual environment, it's not the justification. It should be actually the opposite. It's better for your brain because bilingual brains are better than monolingual ones.
Okay.
Oh, it's for you.
Thank you. So I want to share with you that before language, it comes communication. And I would like you to draw your attention to this graphic. What do you think I divided it? What do you think is in the dark green? You can share with me. What do you think? Or what else? And in the light green, what do you think is it? Verbal? Okay. So you think the light green is verbal or non-verbal? Verbal. Let's see if you're correct. Yes. So most of our communication is non-verbal. And how can we address that? By checking the posture, the facial expressions, sign language, gestures, clapping, winking, pointing, another language, another gesture, and social distancing. What are language skills? I would like to draw your attention for this because it's very important for us to learn the basis. And language can be divided into 5 different areas. So first, the morphology. It means the gender, the number, and the verbal. The pragmatic, using the language in the social context and adjustments. For example, at home, you're more free to speak and so on. At your job, of course, you're not you are a little more formal. Phonology are the sounds in the speech. The syntax are the rules for organizing words in the sentence. And the semantic, it's the vocabulary itself. I like to tell you that it's really, really important to understand what is the difference between the comprehension and the expression area. Because, as Joanna was saying, children can understand concepts, but sometimes don't express them. For example, if you want to address a vocabulary and you want to know if they understand what's the horse, for example, you just say, point to the horse, grab the horse, give the horse, so he doesn't express it. He just has to pick it up, okay? And if you want to know if he knows what it is, you use the WH questions like what, where, which. For example, what animal is this? You're gonna know if he knows what animal is this, what, where is it? You're gonna see if he knows the preposition. So it's on or under, for example. Back to Joanna.
So how do children learn language? Babies learn language by hearing other people speak and by practicing making those sounds. So the key word here is people. We need people to teach people how to speak. And the babies, they listen to the sounds and they practice those sounds in their brains before saying them. So before saying them, they are already mimicking the sounds in a pathway in their brains. And usually, well, all babies, they can perceive 800 sounds at birth, and these 800 sounds are all the sounds that form all the words in every language in the world. So when babies are born, they have this potential of learning all the languages in the world. So what happens after this? They usually, in each language, you only need 40 sounds or so to speak all the words in one language. So how does this happen? So the baby when the baby hears sounds more often, those sounds are expressed in the brain and these pathways become stronger. So each time the baby hears a sound with repetition, the pathways that become stronger, they remain in the brain for them to use afterwards in their language, their native language. But what happens to the other sounds, the other 700 or so sounds that exist, they suffer a process called pruning. And pruning is when you don't use that pathway, that circuit in the brain, in your brain cells, when you don't use them, they get cut off your brain. They disappear, sometimes forever. So it's the statistical frequency of particular sounds that will make the baby produce these pathways, these stronger pathways, and the others will not be as strong and will actually disappear. So initially they use mirror neurons, mirror brain cells to do this. So as we are speaking sounds to the baby is producing the pathways in their brains and making them stronger for the sounds that are used with the baby and not for the other sounds, okay? So this is what happens. So this is happening as early as 6 months. Before 6 months, the baby is really developing his eyesight and his hearing because he needs that to speak afterwards. But this period after 6 months, it's limited. And what happens? This actually is what explains accents. So if a Spanish person learns English after 7 years or so, 7 years of age, he will probably have an accent forever. So you can actually tell that a Spanish person is speaking English, that English is being spoken by a Spanish person. Also, French, you can also tell that a French person is speaking English, and you can tell he's probably French. In German, and me also, I'm Portuguese, you can probably tell that I have an accent. Why is this? It's because I am adapting, and we are all, well, people who learn a language after a certain age, like me, I learned English after I was 8. We are adapting our 40 or so sounds that we have learned as a baby for the other language. So we don't have the sounds of the other language. We are adapting the sounds that we have in our brains, the pathways that we already have, adapting to another language. Okay, so after 6 months, the baby enters the sensitive period in which he will receive the sounds that are the basic structure of the language, that are the foundations of the language. And this sensitive period lasts for a few months. But if we are exposed to 2 languages, this period is extended. So meaning that exposure to more than 1 language and more than 40 sounds, 60, 70, 80 sounds, will turn the brain, will make the brain become more plastic even, and learn more sounds and more languages and more words. So being sensitive to more sounds, it's good because we are sensitive to more words. It's not like the word comes through this ear and out this ear. We are sensitive to the word, so we learn the word faster. So this is a really important period after 6 months of life. So, but the child can still pick up a second language with a fair degree of fluency until the age of 7. After the age of 7 is hard. So, but this sensitive period usually goes up to 3 years old. So saying that we are bilingual, it means that probably we have learned 2 languages until the age of 3. After the age of 3, we acquire the language as a skill and not in the area of the brain for the native language. So as a skill, it's really different because we are not so spontaneous and making an effort and looking for the words and looking for to construct the sentence in our brain as a skill and not spontaneously and fluently as if we have learned it until we were 3. Okay, so this is very interesting. And this maybe is the most important slide I have to tell you today. So more language experience results in more rapid language development. Experience equals language development. But not all experiences are equal. So learning is not learning language for the brain of a baby is not passive. We cannot wait and just he's there and he's listening to a video and this will happen, he will learn language. It will not. It requires human interaction. And there are 2 types of human interaction that can teach language, the direct one and the indirect one. So the direct one meaning speaking to the child is speaking to us and we are speaking to the child face-to-face, one-on-one, so this is the direct one. The indirect one is when 2 parents are speaking and the child is listening, and this also teaches language, but as you might know, it's not as good as the direct interaction, right? Because in the direct interaction, the baby receives social cues, and this helps learn the meaning of the words much faster than the indirect one, the indirect human interaction. For bilingual children, research has established that it's the relative amount of exposure that will predict if the child is better at one language or the other for bilingual exposure. But quantity and quality interfere in this process because, for example, if I tell you, oh, this baby is exposed to 80% of his day in English and only to 20% in Portuguese, you will tell me how he knows how to speak English. But actually, 80% he's at the nursery, and the nursery, in his class, there are a lot of babies, and there is no or almost none direct interaction. There are maybe a few minutes a day. And so the main 80% is indirect interaction, but then he comes home, 20% of his waking hours, he's with his mother, and the mother plays with him, talks to him, describes the day, reads to him. So probably I can tell you that he will have a better Portuguese than English in this case. Okay, so quantity and quality, we need to know that this affects the brain in different ways. Okay. So what tells me that if a child starts speaking, you remember the first concerns I told you about that were specific to Macau. What does it tell me when a baby starts speaking in English and not the native language of the parents? It tells me that the human interaction of this baby, either indirect or direct one, is being done in more quality and quantity in English than in Portuguese. Okay, this is what it tells me. Because many parents say, oh no, but probably he's learning it from YouTube, Cocomelon, and the videos. No, babies do not learn language from screens. This is impossible. And I brought you this study to prove that it's not possible for babies to learn the basic structure of a language from a screen. It's completely impossible. So they did this study where there were 4 groups of 9-month-old babies in Seattle. So they were only exposed to English until then. They had 12 sessions in 1 month, which well, they were divided in 4 groups. So I will tell you what happened with which one of the groups. So the first group, they listened to Mandarin native speakers while playing for 12 sessions in 1 month. The second group, they were exposed to a video with the same content, but it was a Mandarin speaking person, but in a video. The same time, same content. The third group was listening to a recording audio, no video and no person, no human being. And the fourth was the control group, and they were exposed to a video in English. So from all these groups, then they returned to the lab for psychological tests and brain monitoring to see their ability to single out Mandarin sounds. So if they were sensitive to the sounds or not. And the only group that was sensitive to sounds was the first group where there was human interaction. And actually, what they found out was really amazing. They were as sensitive as 9-month-old babies in Taiwan who were exposed to Mandarin from birth, with only 12 sessions, but they had human interaction. The other 2 groups with video and audio had the same sensitivity to Mandarin sounds as the control group that wasn't even exposed to Mandarin, was only exposed to English. So this tells us that babies do not acquire a language by watching YouTube or Cocomelon. So they need experience. They need experience with a person, a human interaction. Okay, oh, sorry.
It's okay, no problem. So now let's talk about bilingualism. We have the simultaneous one. We have 3 steps. The first one, the stage 1, is the child mixes both language. So instead of talking only in Portuguese or only in Chinese or only in English, it mixes. Instead of saying give water, it says give agua. Stage 2, the child separates both language, the 2 or the 3 languages that he is learning, and starts to recognize the people to whom he speaks each language. The final stage is when he chooses one language to become dominant. And by the age of 7, the child can cope with 2 language systems. Now I'm going to show you the 5 stages of the second language acquisition. So you have here between the birth at the 6 months, we have the silent phase that, as Joanna already told you, is acquiring everything and try to understand the world around him. And between half-year-old and 1-year-old is the early production. He starts to babble and other sounds. Up to 3 years old, telegraphs speech, so he produces some words like give water, give toy, for example. Between 3 and 5 years old, we have the protective language use, and between the 5 and the 10, we have the competent language use that is usually around 7 years old. Back to Joanna.
So being bilingual, it's really good for our brain. Well, I'm not, but yeah, for your brains. Compared to non-bilingual, bilingual people have less problems in understanding math concepts. So what does math have to do with language? It has to do with the brain being more plastic and assessing other areas of the brain, because language does this for you. It makes you understand the world. So they are better at understanding math concepts, solving problems, also having stronger thinking skills, better self-control. So it also affects emotion, more flexible and abstract thinking skills, using logic, focusing, remember, making decisions. And this is very interesting, learning other languages. So what means is that if we have more sounds, not only the 40 of our language, we are more sensitive to acquiring other sounds and other words in even other languages. It not only makes us more competent in the first language that we have and the other language that we're exposed to as being bilingual, but also learning other languages afterwards. So what this means is actually that bilingual people are better at languages. And so it can never be that bilingual children have language delay. It's never the explanation for this. It's actually the opposite. We should actually think that if bilingual children have a language delay, it's even more concerning. So, and other interesting facts, the majority of people in the world speak at least 2 languages, and they have more job opportunities than monolingual adults, so these are interesting facts. So, language delay. Language development is the key to early learning. So, because we as humans, we explain everything around us with language. We think using language. So we even numbers, we explain to kids maths using language. So it's really important to have language to understand the rest of the world and think and develop all the other areas of the brain. So also for language, for social skills, and also for emotions and to regulate behavior. Because if a child can use words to express his feelings and what he wants, he will not have to cry and tantrum, right? So children with language delay usually have a more dysregulated behavior than children who are able to use language better, okay? So by definition, well, the definition of language delay, we don't have a universal one. I don't know why, but there isn't any. But for purposes of research, we usually use this one. The clinical threshold for concern is the age at which 90% of typical developing children have attained the skill. What does this mean? It means that if we are concerned that a child that is our patient has a language delay, and if he has criteria for language delay, he's not only below average, he's on the bottom 10%. Means that that child, compared to other children at exactly the same age, 90% of other children are capable of doing something, a skill in language that he is not. So there is really a reason for concern. Prevalence, we know that the natural history of language delay is that many children, and most of them, they catch up eventually before the age of 5. So yes, these are good news. So 10 to 50% at the age of 2 to only 2 to 5% remain after the age of 3. So what are the risk factors? We have the first 2, as you can tell, are environmental. Poverty, low parental education. These are environmental factors. So when the parent has a low education, what happens? The parent uses a very simple form of his language. He will probably not use as many words, not have as much vocabulary, probably repeat words with different meanings, but use the same word anyways, probably has grammar mistakes. So yes, so this is like a low stimulation for language for his children. So we can all understand that, right? So low parental education means it's a risk factor for language delay. So low birth weight and prematurity, this has to do with the development in the beginning of life, the development of the brain. If there are problems here, probably it will also affect language afterwards. Family history of language delay tells us that this might have genetic predisposition, right? Male sex I've already talked about, so 2% more boys. Maternal depression. This has to do with the fact that when the mother is depressed, she does not respond as much to the child. So the child initiates interaction, the mother will not respond immediately or will not respond at all because she's depressed. So environment also. Low stimulation of the child. And last but not least, screen time, especially during the first year of life. And you might say, but in the first year of life, the baby doesn't talk. Yes, we know, but he's establishing the foundation of language, as I told you before. He's establishing the pathways to the sounds that he will need, so that he will be sensitive to the words he will hear afterwards. So screen time, what does screen time do? Screen time will distract the child, from the interaction he needs to build those pathways that are essential to language. So, and in Macau, as you can see, over 70% of infants use gadgets, 70% before the age of 18 months, and almost 100% before the age of 3. So we have a problem here. And as Macau News also noticed, gadgets are drastically reducing children's exposure to language. So it's this exposure that will produce the language delay. And well, children might be exposed to e-gadgets and they don't initiate interaction with adults, but the adults who are using e-gadgets are also not engaging with children. So when parents use e-gadgets at home in front of your children, they will usually speak 1,000 words less than the parents who don't use e-gadgets. So remember, 1,000 words every day for years and years, that while the language of their kids is developing, and the language and all the other development, 1,000 words less a day. So this is reducing drastically the exposure to language. So when I referred to the definition of language delay, I usually ask parents, I try to find the red flags for development. So these are usually the questions I ask parents to know if they have criteria of language delay. So from birth, does not respond to sounds. At 6 to 9 months, does not babble. At 12 months, well, in the first birthday, the child needs to say one word at least. Usually mama, dada, daddy, or dada, or papa, to call parents, but one word at least at 12 months. So at 15 months, the child needs to point. This is nonverbal communication. At 18 months, the child needs to say at least 5 words spontaneously with a meaning, so with a purpose. And at 24 months, it's a red flag when the child uses less than 50 words. So when at 2 years old, I ask the parents how many words, if they start counting the words, it's not a good sign, because it's probably less than 50. But at 24 months, children should say more than 200 words. So less than 50 words is a red flag. And they need to combine words. They can combine words in any language, like Zélia said, give agua, it's okay, buy me. And I count the words in every language. So I count Portuguese words, I count English words, I count any words that the baby has to check for this red flag. Okay, back to you.
Okay. So now my next point is the milestones and the red flags from 3 years old to 5 years old. Don't worry, I know this is a lot of information, but I'm going to focus on the main ones, okay? So, of course, this table is for the 3 years old, this one for the 4, and this one for the 5. What I'd like you to keep in mind is that at 3 years old, they are supposed to make sentences with 3 words, answer to who and what questions, like who did you do this with? What did you play in school? Follow 2-step orders. For example, pick up the glass and put on the table, for example. Use plurals, compare objects, use the past, and some location words like on, under, and so on. Around 4 years old, they are supposed to make sentences using more than 3 words, use an and because. I did this because, na. Use the past superlatives, the biggest, the tallest, understand two-step orders or requests, use also the first, the next, and the last when they tell you a story or an event, and understand other location words like inside and under that are more specific. Around 5 years old, they are supposed to make sentences at least with 6 words. Use at least one irregular plural, for example, one goose, two geese. Use future, use another more location words as behind, beside, in front of, and between. Use words to express yesterday and tomorrow. Retell a simple story. Start to blend some words. Recognize rhyming, and recognize and name 10 or more letters and write his or her own name. This is a graphic that I made based on the literacy and based on my work field. And I'd like to draw your attention because since the above, until 3 years old, 3.5, they start to use more the lips. So the plosive sounds like the b, and so on. Later, they're going to acquire more the throat sounds, as we say, like the k, the g. Later on, they're going to create more the lips movement when they spread the s and the sh. These are voiceless sounds. Later on, vibrating sounds like the z, z. And in the end, they're going to acquire the R and the L sound. Sometimes I have parents or even teachers that ask me, I have a student, for example, let's say he's a teacher, with 4 years old, it doesn't say the R sound. That's okay, no problem. Still have until 6 years old to accurate it. Okay, and by the way, this is in the language. We have different sounds in the Portuguese and the Chinese one, as we know. So I like to draw your attention for the red flags. So red flags with 3 years old are these ones. So if your child or your student does not follow one-step instructions, give me a glass. That's a red flag. Do not make sentences with 3 words. Do not understand negative requests. For example, give me the cup that is not green, for example. So we can distinguish the green and the not green. Do not distinguish opposites. For example, the big and small. Give me the small cup. Give me the big cup. Do not interact with other peers. Do not respond to their name. Use simple words to communicate. And do not point to daily routine objects. Red flags for 4 years old. If they don't follow to stress instructions, for example, give me the glass and the pencil. Do not understand concepts like colors, numbers, main body parts, and also shapes. They start to stutter, it's a red flag. Strangers do not understand their speech. They cannot retell an event or story is also a red flag. Here I put a note regarding the plurals because if I say, give me a pencil, give me 2 pencils, and the child gives only one, could be also a hearing problem because the S sound is a voiceless sound. So it's better to do a hearing test first before address this skill. Use 3 words to communicate and do not understand superlatives is also a red flag for this age. Regarding 5 years old, it's a red flag if they do not follow complex instructions, if they get frustrated when not understood by others, struggles to articulate some sounds, have difficulty dividing words into syllables. For example, watermelon. If they do watermelon, it's a red flag. If they cannot retell a simple story or an event, if they do not understand and express the past tense or the future, and do not distinguish between the he or the she for the gender, and do not understand irregular plurals is also a red flag for this age. Now back to Joanna.
Yes, so for evaluation, we start with the concern, of course, or if the parent doesn't have a concern, but at the screening test, I find something that is criteria for language delay, then we start with this diagnosis. So we could have a language delay, then I will proceed with the physical and neurological exam. This is with the aim of trying to see if this is the language delay only, or this is part of a syndrome or a more general condition of the child. Then I need to evaluate the language environment. And what do I want to know? Everything. I want to know this child wakes up, who is caring for the child in the morning, who is continuing to care for the child during the day, does this child go to nursery or not? If he goes to nursery, what language is nursery? Does the nursery the class have many students or not? Or does he stay home? He stays home with whom? With what person? Talking what language? And when the parents come home, the parents, what language do they talk, and how many hours do they spend with the child? Is this child at screens all the time? Does he eat meals with screens? I want to know everything about the language environment of this child. And then I have to request a hearing test. So the hearing test is the first part of the algorithm, of every algorithm, every protocol. So we really need the hearing test. Most parents, they will say, no, we don't need the hearing test because he hears fine. No, I know that you might think that he hears fine, but he might not hear every frequency of sound. So we cannot start any type of treatment, any speech therapy, without a hearing test. Just
Yes.
Delia just told you about the voiceless sounds. We really need a hearing test first. Also because some diagnosis, of the differential diagnosis for language delay is hearing impairment. So if we treat the hearing impairment early, we can actually have a very good prognosis for language development. So we really need a hearing test first or in the beginning of the evaluation. So for the differential diagnosis, we have 4. I've just told you about the hearing impairment, but we have isolated language delay. This one is, okay, this child has a problem with language, is only the language is the problem for this child. It can be a late bloomer. These are the ones that catch up before the age of 5. These are the majority of children, or the ones that have a specific language delay and they will not catch up and they will remain delayed after the age of 5, and this is there is a probability of their having language delay or language problems until adulthood. So this is the first one. Then language delay as a symptom of developmental condition. So another condition, like for example autism, may have motor problems, social cognition and problems, and also language delay as a symptom. So this is a more general developmental condition that has a language delay as a symptom. So language hearing impairment. And the last one, poor linguistic environment. Usually the risk factors for these are low parental education, as I told you, child neglect or abuse, maternal depression, because the size of a child's vocabulary and the maturity of their grammar are associated with the quality and quantity of caregiver input, as I've told you until now. So I already addressed this. So, but in Macau and in our clinical setting and in the population of our clinic, as I've told you, so the risk factor of being Western and living here in Macau without an extended family who can help us take care of our children, we have to rely on helpers, most of us. So why is this a problem? Because they spend most of the time with our children, and they have these 2 issues, I would say. I know this is a sensitive matter, but I'll try explaining it. Because they are not speaking their native language. So they are speaking a language in which they are probably not bilingual. They learned it after 7 years old, probably. So as not being a native speaker of one language, they are not very spontaneous in doing so. They are making an effort. So when you're making an effort speaking a language, like for example I am right now, you tend not to speak as many words as you would if you were native to that language. If you compare this with, for example, grandmothers, they know all the lullabies, all the rhymes and the songs. They are with the children. What do? They describe everything. They don't stop speaking. So they're always speaking, right? And maybe this is different in this population of Western people living in Macau from the rest of Macau, where the children are usually spend more time with grandmothers and grandfathers. And they are speaking for sure their native languages, right? and helpers are not. So what are they speaking? They are speaking probably English, right, helpers, but what English? In English, a very simple form of English. A simple form with low vocabulary, with using the same words for different things, like the low parental education risk factor. They are probably giving single word commands to children or single word instructions, right? And they're avoiding actually to speak. And they are not singing all the lullabies and all the songs and the rhymes, right? So yes, this might be a problem here. And also, they're busy with other work, right? They're busy with house chores. Sometimes relying on screen time to finish the chores, right? So this might be a very low stimulation, low environment for babies, especially because in Macau we know that we need to send our applications for our kids at 3 years old for school. So if we don't, we have to, right, at 3 years old. Before this, some babies, some children do not go to nursery. Some do, some don't. Where do they stay? With helpers. Where do they stay in the first year of life? Because they're not going to nursery in the first year or maybe 18 months. When does the language, the basic structure and the foundation of language develop? Is from 6 months to maybe a few months later, maybe 18 months, 2 years old. So we have this critical sensitive period where they are maybe not being as stimulated as they should. Okay, so it's sensitive. I'm not blaming anyone, but this is maybe a poor linguistic environment for children in our clinical setting. Okay. Okay, from my pediatric point of view, I just need to distinguish between these two situations. So first one, I need to distinguish if it's a part that this language delay, is it a part of a more general condition, like an autism, like a Down syndrome, like an anxiety disorder, like that I should, that these children should need neurological intervention or psychological intervention, even medication or other type of sensory therapy, occupational therapy. So this needs a multidisciplinary kind of approach. We don't have this in the clinic. So yes, this child needs to go to the hospital. But if it's only an isolated language delay, then this child should start speech therapy ASAP. What do I mean about ASAP? I mean, as soon as we have the initial evaluation, needs to start speech therapy. Why? Because there was a study where they randomized kids in 2 groups. So first group, they had a 3-year-old, by the way. They start speech therapy, 4 months speech therapy, pause of 4 months, and another 4 months of speech therapy. The other group, pause initially 4 months, then speech therapy 4 months, and another 4 months of speech therapy. So both groups 8 months, but the difference was when they started, right away or after 4 months. So they followed these children until primary school, and there were differences in academic performance in primary school. For what I mean is the group that started earlier did better in every other language, not only language, in every area of school. So yes, we should start speech therapy right away.
So what can you do to help? So my point of view, the steps and strategies. So we have 3 steps. First, observe. Please take notes what you observe, what you think could be a question or a red flag in different daily life contexts. Don't forget to distinguish between the communication, that is the posture, the facial expressions, and so on. The eye contact as well is really important, and the verbal skills. Step 2, simulate. So you suspect a language or speech delay, you can communicate the facts and make a description of your concerns. And last step, intervention. So here, it's where I appear and we start the intervention. Parents and teachers, take part of the process, but they are different terms. I'm going to do a different work, and then parents and teachers can stimulate. Here I would like to share with you some communications and early language strategies. Please focus on 2 or 3 ones so you can retain some information in our presentation. I would like to draw your attention that it's really important to establish the eye contact with your child to remain in focus in interacting with you. Kneel or sit down at the same height. Don't be standing up or standing down. Be in close proximity. Hold the object in question. For example, if you want to teach what is a bottle of water, hold it so it can look at you and look at water and do this pyramid between this interaction. Use songs or music, different rhythms, repetition, and waiting time. These 2 are really important, but let me tell you, the waiting time, give at least 6 seconds. For example, if you want to know what color is this, and wait at least 6 seconds, and then you can repeat the order. Trick them. For example, oh, this is a triangle, and if he knows shapes, of course he's going to say, no, that's a square. Responsive naming, giving some clues. For example, oh, this is a what? And he says water. Flashcards, and also telegraphic speech, because sometimes parents and teachers, they use so many words and it's so confusing. For example, can you please give me an apple? So 7 words, and if I say give apple, maybe give it the apple. Can you give an apple? Then you're gonna do longer sentences and longer questions. Language learning strategies. Here are some. Think of image to help remember the information. Ask to retell the day so you can get more information and accurate the communication and language skills. Look at patterns and relationships. Use word maps and charts. Note down. Listen or read to keywords. Pay attention to the context, mistakes, please. Identify goals in the language learning. Reflect on the listening, speaking, reading, and writing process in older kids. After grade 1, reread and rewrite and repeat and use new learned words to see if they really understood them and they can use them in their daily life. Back to Joanna.
Okay, so we are almost finishing here.
Yes.
So as we have noticed that probably in our clinical setting, the main risk factor is their environment. It means that there is a margin for prevention, right? So we can have more speech therapists in Macau, yes, we can, but we should also be addressing the prevention part of this, trying not to have more language delay, children with language delay. So how do we do this? We do this by having a language-rich environment. It's really called language nutrition. We need to be narrating daily activities. So talking about what we do through the day, explaining and commenting in everything. So don't stop speaking, really. And use gestures with words. Also, baby talk is really important. There was, I don't know, maybe a confusion, a myth, I don't know, that baby talk was not good. Baby talk is excellent because it emphasizes the sounds and the boundaries of words. And there was a study where they divided 2 groups. One group of parents used baby talk, the other didn't. And the parents who used baby talk, the babies learned more than twice the words compared to the other. So use baby talk, sing to your child, sing together. And also when afterwards, provide exposure to advanced and unusual words. Don't try to adapt everything to the baby. Try to use different words so that they can ask what it is, and then they learn. And reading aloud is really important. It's really, really, really important because it will actually compensate for the lack of words we have, because we are not using all the words every day. So if we read, we can actually teach more words. Okay, so about parenting, because it's also my area of interest, parents should spend more quality time with their children. So the exposure should be more in quantity, so quantity of time, but also quality of time, spending time playing, reading to your children, being in direct interaction with your children. So parents should be warm, should not punish children, and should be responsive. So every time the baby or the child starts communicating, he's serving like tennis, like playing tennis. So he serves, and we need to return every interaction. And continue the child's conversational lead, repeating what he's saying, repeating the sentence or the word, and expanding on it and asking questions. And if possible, 0 screen time. I don't know until what age, but what the literature said is at least for the first year of life, but 2 years would be great, 0 screen time, and after this never exceed 1 hour a day, because we know that before the age of 3, but surely before the age of 2, screen times are harming the brain of our children. So no benefits here. It's only harm. No benefits whatsoever. They're not learning anything on language, anything on anything. So it's really harmful for them. And helpers, again, it's, yes. So in Macau, of course, they're very important in our society. And especially if we don't have more family and any help, we need to have their help, right? But since our children are spending so much time, and especially babies, at these sensitive periods, if they're spending so much time with the helpers, like 8, 9, 10 hours a day, we need to try to help them enrich their environment in language. So how do we do this? They should engage with the child whenever the child starts communicating, and they should probably be reading to the child every day to compensate for probably the lack of words or the lack of vocabulary, or yes, the low language level. Also, the chores should never be as important as the child. So yes, play with the child. Do not focus on dinner, on anything. I know this might be important, but the most important thing is to play with the child. Go to the floor, play with the child on the floor, and repeat what they're saying, expand on it, talk to the child. And be warm and affectionate, they usually are, and never, never, ever use screens with the child. So the helpers should never be on screen themselves or provide the screen to the child to do anything else. So I think this should be really important to tell them no screens. And lastly, prognosis. 60% of children will catch up between the ages of 2 and 3. So this is good. The bad news is I don't know which children will catch up. It's not possible to predict accurately. So we still need to refer them to speech therapy. If they catch up, good. If they don't, well, they will need speech therapy. So, but which children are the most, the ones that have better prognosis? As I already told you, the ones that have receptive language skills, the ones that understand everything, and the ones that have normal gestural and communication and symbolic thinking, the ones that play make-believe, like picking up a shoe and talking on the phone. These are the ones that will probably resolve before primary school. But the ones that don't, and the ones that persist after 5 years of age, may continue, as I've told you, until adulthood. And this was the most interesting part of the information that I didn't have before, and I got while I was doing this presentation, is that the success in school is more correlated directly to the mastery of the home language than the school language. So it means that knowing the parent's language and the mastery of the native language at home is really important for the child to understand the world and understand other concepts that don't have to do with language directly. And it's this connection with the parents and the interaction with them in their language, their native language, that will help develop their brains, not only in language. So this means that they will have more success at school, even if the school language is another one. So don't underestimate the language of the parents, the native language. Don't say, oh no, but he will need English, so I will not speak to him in Portuguese, I will speak in English, so it's better for him. No, it's not. It's not good for them. It's better to speak their home language. I had this clinical case, but we are out of time, sorry. Final remarks. Is there a higher prevalence of language delay in bilingual children in Macau? Well, bilingualism doesn't have anything to do with language delay, right? As I've told you. Is there a higher prevalence? Probably not. Not in Macau. Probably it's just our population, the population of our private setting.
And being bilingual and learning more than one language is not a waste of time. It's never a cause for a language delay. So promote the interaction, communicate with your children or with your students, increase the language skills, the 5 areas that I already told you, and engage with them. Neuroplasticity is highest from the above until 5.
So when parents suspect language development delay, they should find a doctor first. So don't wait. Probably the child will, 100% of times that he has a diagnosis, will need language delay. Speech therapy. Will need therapy.
Yes. Language development needs direct human interaction, as we said before, and depends on the exposure quantity and quality. It's really important for you to focus on this. Children must need to be open to learning and receptive to enriching experience. So different contexts, different people, everything different, so it can remain with more vocabulary and accurate all the skills. Children will talk less, naturally receive less interactive talk with others of peers, of course.
And some forms of language delay may be prevented, as I think that in Macau there are many that can be prevented. Okay, we
have a little quiz for you. It only takes 2 minutes. Can we do it? Let's do it. Okay, please scan this QR code. Okay, also gonna do so. Não dá, cara.
Consegues?
Não consigo, tenho que ir ali.
Consegue, deixa lá. Ah, já está aqui.
Okay. Wait, Mr. Reed has to put it.
Ah, ok.
No.
Mas teu ainda agora deu.
Excuse me. Okay, perfect. Close the window. Yes, also live. Okay. The QR code is gonna start, please. Yes. Okay. It's just 2 minutes. Okay, please scan the QR code and the game pin, and your name's gonna appear there.
Really?
Yes. Okay, great. Perfect. You can choose your emoji. We have 18 players so far.
Ok, acho que podes começar.
Is everyone ready or still needs... Ready? Wait. Okay. This is great. You're ready? Can we move on? Yes. Can start, please? Okay, let's start it. Let's see if you learned something with our presentation. True or false questions. Can children learn only one language at a time? True or false? Please click on the blue or red. Okay, next please. Very well, most of you got it. Okay, Julius, you are in the first position. Next. True or false? Learning multiple languages will not confuse your child. Is this sentence true or false? Will not confuse your child. Of course, it won't confuse your child. Next, please. Let's see. Oh, we have a new winner. Okay, let's move on. Is it important for the child to identify which person to talk to in either Portuguese, Chinese, or English? I told you about this in the stage 2 in the bilingual stages.
Bench.
No, of course they need to know to which person should they talk in Chinese, in English, and Portuguese. Don't mix language. Okay, the brain is winning.
The
Next.
brain.
True or false? Is it okay for a child to use both languages in the same sentence? After 3 years old. Yes. Oh, you're quite fast. Nice. And last and not least, I think. Okay, Julius, good job. Next, please. Okay, still have 2 questions. So, do you think early intervention before 3 years old is important? True or false? Let me remind you that if the child doesn't address in one area, can be low in the other ones. Yes, good job. Next. Well done. Last but not least, I can support children's language level development by having conversations with them, by just talking with them. Amazing. I'm really happy with your performance. Next, let's see the podium. So, 3rd place, Mary. Very well done. Second one, who is this one? Young Rita. And 1st place goes to Julius.
Who's Julius?
Oh, nicely done. Very well.
Congratulations.
So we hope you learned something with us. Let's go back to the presentation. Presentation, yes. Okay. Let's go to the previous slide. Yes, perfect.
Next.
Okay,
So,
these are some resource lists for you to check, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. Sim. Thank you so much, Joana and Zélia, for the detailed presentation. I think it was very enriching for this session, especially for young people, parents, professors here, at least for me as a father. And also, I believe there will be some questions that people might want to ask you, some Q&A here. Anyone?
Thank you for the presentation. I would like to ask, our child now have about 18 months. And my first language is Portuguese. My wife, the first language is Cantonese. We both acquire English later on and also Chinese. And which language is the best one for we talk to our child, even because we communicate between us in English?
Okay, this is a really good question. First, let me ask you, what language do you like for your child to acquire, to follow, like in the grade 1, elementary, and so on?
Usually we talk in English, but we don't have like a specific language that we want to learn, because we believe like learn language is really important to the communication.
Yes, but you don't want to follow like the Portuguese curriculum or the English or the...
I believe the English curriculum will be better.
Anna, do you want to start? And I go?
You can start, I can add.
Okay, so you can speak in either language, and it's really important for the child to have different environments in each language. For example, the nursery could be also the Chinese, at home can be English and also Portuguese. When you go to the park with some Portuguese friends, addressing Portuguese, so different contexts, more vocabulary. So don't worry that, but it's important for the child to have a dominant language, because it's the one that we're going to address if he has a language delay or not. So back to Joanna, now this part.
Well, I think that you should have direct interaction in your own language, each one of you, with your child. So, for example, the father might speak Portuguese with the child in direct interaction, so playing with the child, and the mother in Cantonese. So, and if the child might start to
differentiate each person.
Firstly, yes, for sure, the child will differentiate, but he or she can start speaking sentences, combining words in different languages, and that's okay. That means that he's a true bilingual, the brain is truly bilingual, and he's moving back and forth in 2 different languages without even noticing that he is. So, but later on, as Zelia explained, he probably will start to differentiate. I can only speak Cantonese with my mother, and I can only speak Portuguese with my father. And with all the direct interaction that this time of exposure, of quality exposure, he will probably learn the 2 languages simultaneously, and this will not be a problem at all.
Yes, it will be a good thing, actually.
It will be very good.
One more question related to the same topic. So how the schools will address, for example, when he talk, give me water, or mix all the language together in the school, how the school will address this kind of topic to educate or to teach the kid? It will not be seen as mistake?
No, because at least until 2 or 3 years old, it's natural to do this kind of mistakes, so no problem. So if the nursery is in English, it's going to give water instead of give agua. So in Chinese, maybe they're going to do it in Chinese, I don't know.
Yes, that's not considered a delay, because we, as I said, we count every word to add those more than 50 words at 2 years old. We count every word, and we try to see if the child combines words, any words. We don't say combine word in Portuguese, combine word in English. We don't say that. So yes, English language as a whole, if it's not delayed due to, as with this criteria that I told you, any language we don't distinguish. Right? So, yes.
Thank you very much.
And it's important to remember the strategies that I show you about the repetition, about the visual clues, and so on. Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening. First of all, I'm not sure if my question was replied in the first few slides. I got here a little bit late, for which I apologize. So I can say my main language is Portuguese. My wife is Chinese Mandarin. Weirdly enough, I speak Portuguese at home with my daughter. She will speak in Mandarin. We speak English between us. She went for nursery, and I can say in a matter of 3 months, she came home speaking fluent English, and Portuguese goes down the window. She speaks Mandarin with grandma, and I will speak with her in Portuguese. She'll reply to me in English. The mom will speak to her in Mandarin. She'll reply in English. I don't consider this a delay, but what would be a more good strategy to handle this? because I do insist in Portuguese and she does insist in replying in English.
Her dominant language is English, as we can,
Yes,
can see.
exactly.
And it's normal for her to mix some words and, for example, try to answer you in English and then you address in the Portuguese answer and say, oh, can you please repeat this? So she can be more familiar with the Portuguese language.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
But I should not refuse the answer in English, correct? I should.
No, you accept and then you say, for example, you say, Daddy, can you give me, I use the water, but give me a cookie.
Yeah.
Okay, queres uma bolacha? Do you want a cookie? And she was gonna repeat it. Okay, repeat with me in Portuguese. Queres uma bolacha? And you can give the visual clues. And with the clapping also, can you give me bolacha? But sorry, I did a mistake here because I mixed both languages.
Yes.
Yes, but it's not so easy.
You're bilingual.
Yes, I'm. You can go on.
So yes, but continue to speak in Portuguese. Continue providing exposure. Yes, continue.
Yes.
And
With
now-
you and Portuguese friends as well, for example.
Yes, a
Yes.
different. Yes.
Even if they mix, even if they say something like, okay, a 3-year-old, almost 4 years, Mamã, isto está broken. Should we correct it? Sim, está partido, or should we just keep on speaking? I don't know.
No.
Should we change to English? I don't know.
Yes, ask them to
Reinforce
he or she,
in Portuguese.
Reinforce, yes, for him or her to start to distinguish between both languages. Yes.
Yes.
And to acquire more vocabulary and so on, so you can build more, form more complex sentences and so on. Yes.
Now, continuing the question from before, it's okay. No worries. It was also something I was going to ask regarding schools. Okay, so my daughter is 2 and 5 months. She will be going to kindergarten now in next school year. I noticed something. Maybe I'm wrong, right? And this is something very tricky, at least for me. We talk about bilingual kids. We would expect at a certain level of bilingual schools and classes. I'm not going to get into any particular discussion on what is bilingual school or not. Whatever the concept was used here, okay, does any of the schools fulfill the concept that we use in terms of teaching, that as far as you know?
So they take into consideration the language of the child, but if it's a Portuguese kindergarten, gonna speak in Portuguese. If it's an international one, probably in English.
Yeah.
So each kindergarten has their dominant language.
Exactly. But do you know any that will use, let's say, more than one on, let's say, bilingual mechanism of teaching, saying same class teaching in Portuguese and Chinese or Chinese and English, and not using, for example, Chinese as a communication language and then have English classes on the side or vice versa?
So the school my children go to, Guining School, they teach. They are bilingual because they teach some subjects in Portuguese and some subjects and the others in Mandarin. So the children know that in each day you have different subjects, right? Maths, Mandarin, Portuguese, arts, and then they go from one class to the other, knowing that they are going to have to speak in another language, because if they are in math class, it's in Mandarin, so they will have to speak in Mandarin. But then they have Portuguese afterwards, they will have to speak in Portuguese. And afterwards they have English, and they will have to speak in English. And arts is in Portuguese, and also physical education, but GS studies is in Mandarin, so it's like mixing everything together. This, I think, is a truly bilingual school.
And I'm not sure if we can use the name of the school because of the recordings, but I didn't get the name of the school. If it's okay, I can ask later.
Yes, okay, ask me later.
All right.
No more questions, I think.
Actually, I have a question, but my English, I'm not good at English. I would wonder ask if a child who is already have language delay, but he's mother language is Cantonese, and his maybe nursery is use English, would you recommend the child to change the environmental, change to a maybe Cantonese nursery?
Okay. Well, yes, because exposure, if the child has already a language delay, so the home language is Cantonese and the school is English. Okay, so if the school is Cantonese, the exposure will be, he will have more exposure. At least quantity-wise, he will have more exposure. So exposure will get him to learn faster the language, probably with speech therapy and with the school being the same language as home, he will develop faster, don't you think?
Yes, I agree with that. But also, if you want to keep in the international school, you should address speech therapy in the mother language, so in Cantonese. So he can acquire the skills in his mother language, so then he can move to the other language. So for example, if you see like the red flag, as for example, 3 years old, that he doesn't use words to communicate, you should address in the mother language, for example. And then later we can move for the English one.
More questions? So due to the time, maybe we will close today the session. But thank you so much, Joanna and Zélia, for today's very enriching session. And we hope we can work together in other type of subjects. Also want to thank again Fundação Rui Cunha today for the logistic support. Felipe Guadalupe is there. And also Toevra represented today the Associação de Médicos de Língua Portuguesa, also the collaboration of this session today. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.